the mental health system works to the international delegation that comes to Trieste. My work is to organize the visit inside the center and inside the mental health center, the emergency unit, inside the system, and to explain how this model works.
Yes.
To delegation such as the delegation of the Ministry of Jordan, the Ministry of Palestine, a delegation from Turkey, Denmark.
Even Britain, I think.
Yes, there was a delegation from Wales that came the last year. Really nice people.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went the first time inside the emergency unit, the SPDC, not as a user of the service, but as a translator.
Okay.
Sorry for my English, but
it's very good.
It simply works. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, it was really interesting to know how this kind of emergency unity works, because it has two main functions. The first is in the case in which the person who has an emergency is not well known by the services. So a first case of
a new case
of psychotic disorder or anything else.
Yeah.
In that case, the person is arrives because there is an emergency number into the general hospital, which deals not only for every kind of health emergency, and they take care about the call with the police or without. So there is a connection, a link between this service, the emergency unit, and the police or the emergency number for health issues.
Okay.
And in this case, there is a clash usually with the person, because usually they don't want to be kept, and there is there could be a sedation of the person. But when he comes inside the SPDC, in the emergency unit, he cannot go out, but there is no contention with him. And so any part of the process of his stay is done by negotiating any kind of step. If the person wants to go out, they explain him why he can't. If the person has a simple need, like he wants to any kind of thing, like to sleep, or they are with him for every moment of his stay, and try to make him understand what's happening, keeping a touch with reality.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say they're with him all the time, I think this is very different from like in Britain, when we think of being with somebody all the time, it's in terms of monitoring, so constantly checking. But here, I think in Trieste, there's a work with the person to try and understand and make sense of the experience. So this doesn't happen a lot in Britain, so it's important.
For example, there was a real nice experience. We were explaining what was happening with inside the emergency unit, and a person who was kept there went to hear what was happening, and he was a real dangerous person in the first stance, but he asked to us if we could put a good word for him in order to have to skip this stay. And to go out, and there was a nice moment in which we were talking to him, and he was more conscious of what was happening, than he was before.
Okay, so I think a lot of people in Britain find this part difficult to understand. So first of all, there's very few people that get admitted. I don't have numbers here. Do you know the numbers of how many people every year get admitted?
Only in
Trieste, in the emergency
unit.
Yeah.
I know that the emergency unit has only 6 beds.
Yeah.
And those beds are usually totally empty.
Okay.
Because they try to. There was only a case during 1 year in which the beds were full, and in those cases they used the other beds inside the mental health centers. But why? Because this place is meant to be a place where a person stays for a really short times.
Yes.
We talk about 3-5 days
yes.
Usually, and then he is sent to the other places of the system.
Yeah.
And they try to keep the beds empty. And even there is the chance if the person has a family, the family can stay with him for the night. Oh. And it's something that happens only in Trieste.
Okay. So, but some people I think might find it difficult to understand, like what happens if somebody really goes away, doesn't want to have anything to do? Would you use like restraint in these cases?
So there is no restraint. The rooms has no doors. All the doors are open. There is no closed spaces inside, and the nurses as well as the psychiatrist or stay with him for all the time. They deal with the person for every kind of. If he wants a cigarette, they give him a cigarette. A cigarette. If he wants to have, if he wants to go out, they talk with him. They stay for the night. If he is too much,
they take turns.
Anxious. They talk about the importance to have pills and drugs for the moment. But there is no. Compulsory. They try to negotiate everything.
Okay. So, Marilena, what I think a lot of people, a discussion that we can have here in Trieste, maybe not probably in Britain yet, but we can have it here, is the extent to which though this the medication can be used as a way to kind of manipulate a situation or to be kind of put pressure on people. In a way.
At the beginning, could see that the doctors put pressure on the patient. But now I understand that in that period, about 8 years ago, I didn't realize how I felt, and I lived in my own world, and I used to think about reality in my own way, and I didn't realize. But I remember, during that time, I didn't want to take the medication. And I remember that a couple of doctors came to me and told me in a very gentle way how important is to take the medicines. Not just for the safety, but for myself, because at that time they could see something that I couldn't see about myself, and I don't think it's yes They said to me, okay, if you don't take medication, we have to
section you, let's
section
say. Yeah.
you. But I think that it's because they could see how
difficult it was
how
for you.
How difficult it was for me, yes, of course.
Okay.
And yes, my story is a long story. And before my first meeting with the doctors and all the staff from the mental health center, I used to, for a couple of months, I used to travel all around Italy by foot. And I was missing. My family was looking for me everywhere. They were worried. And I had a kind of life like an homeless. And this created in my head a way of thinking about reality that was not true. And the first time I came back to Trieste was in SPDC, in the emergency unit. And yes, I was with another person, I don't remember clearly now. And my family could visit me. And there was no restraint. And then after a couple of days, I went to the Center for Mental Health. And
so you just were sectioned for like a few days, couple of days?
Yes, in the emergency unit, just for a couple of days, because of my experience, I couldn't understand what was going on. So I had to stay a couple of days in the emergency unit. And as I told you, I remember my auntie visiting me, and even my father and all my family. And then I went to the center, and after that there was the 1 month.
In the mental health
in the
center.
mental health center.
Okay. So one thing that a lot of people try to explain to a lot of people in Britain is that not every place in Italy is like Trieste.
Okay. No, it is true because we needed to say that the experience of Trieste was pretty unique in all the world. It was because when Basaglia closed the asylum, he had the support of the World Health Organization. He reached to have a political support locally by Michele Zanetti, who was the president of the province of Trieste, who gave a blank chart to come si dice?
I don't know actually. Basically, he said that Basaglia could do anything he wanted to do. And his revolution had an international importance since the first year of its revolution. The experience of Trieste was an example, a practice, a good practice that led to the rule, the law, the 180 law. And it was this law was written because of the importance of the experience. When after 2 years after Basaglia's death, after the law, Basaglia died. Yeah.
And so the process of his reform